Hello students, in this C# program we will see how we can allocate memory to arrays dynamically. How we can allocate memory dynamically to our arrays. So dynamic memory allocation means we allocate the memory for our arrays at the time of running our program. Static allocation of memory means we allocate the memory for array at the time of compile time. So what are the drawbacks while we initialize or allocate memory for array like this? This is the static memory allocation. This array is allocated memory for only 4 elements, and if we want to store some extra elements inside this array, then we can't store because there is not that much memory for this array to store more than 4 elements inside this. Also, if I declare the array size as 100 or 200 because we want more memory when we insert some more elements, but if I am declaring the array size as 100 and at the time of execution if I am only storing only 10 to 20 elements inside it, then other 80 elements memory is will be wasted. Okay, if we give the array size as too large, then memory will be wasted, and if we declare the array size as too short, then there may be chances of not enough memory to store some more elements. So this is the drawback of static memory allocation for an array. So in this program we will allocate memory for an array at the time of running our program. So instead of initializing such constant element to an array, we just declare our array and then give one message to user like this: console.write, enter or how many elements you want to store inside array. We give message how many elements you want to store inside array, or enter the number of elements. Such message you also give on console. Now user gives one number of elements, means here we accept the number of elements first before allocating the memory to this array element which is of integer type. We first enter one message how many elements you want to store inside array, then user gives one integer value which is the number of elements he or she wants to store inside the array. So we accept that particular number into this n. Now how we can accept the values from user? By using console.readline. Okay, by using console.readline we accept the values from user at the time of running our program. Now this readline gives me the string output, so I need to convert it into int 32. So inside n there are number of elements which are user want to store inside this array. So now we know how many elements we want to store inside that inside this array. So we need to allocate memory for these n elements. If n is having 5 values, then we want to allocate memory for 5 elements. If n is having 10 value, then we need to allocate memory for 10 elements. When this is the exact memory allocation, right? This memory will be allocated at the time of running our program, because this n having value or n stores value at the time of running our program. So this n is also initialized at the time of running our program, and also we now allocate the memory for this integer array after accepting the value of this n, which is the size of our array. Now how we can allocate the memory for this array? By using new keyword. And which type of memory we want to allocate? Integer type. Okay, we want to store integer type of elements, and we are not giving this constant size here. Now we know exact memory allocation we want here. So for n elements we want to allocate a memory. So there is no need to give such constant size here, because now we know how many elements user wants to store inside the array, n elements. So instead of giving constant size, which is the static memory allocation, instead of allocating memory statically, we allocate here memory for this array dynamically. If n is having 5 sequential blocks, memory will be allocated for this array. If n having 100, then 100 sequential block memory will be allocated for this array, which is integer type array. Now here we just declare the array. Inside this statement we allocate the memory dynamically. Dynamic memory allocation. Okay, and this is just the declaration of array declaration. Now here memory will not be allocated, just array will be declared, and inside this statement we allocate the memory for n elements. Now the memory will be blank, means for each element there is default initialization is 0, means all array elements or all n elements having value 0, which is default value of that particular array. Now we need to store some other than 0 elements inside this array, and we are accepting those n elements from user and store inside this array. So I am using here for which goes from 0, because array index starts from 0 to n, because there are n elements. Okay, user wants to store n elements inside this array, so I am giving the array I am going to use for loop from 0 to n minus 1 here, because n elements we can store from 0th index to n minus 1 index. Now we give one message to user as console.write and enter array element. First we accept the number of elements from user. Now inside this for loop we accept those n elements one by one from user. So this message will be printed n times on console window. Now we accept that particular number inside this array. Here our array name is array of I is equal to this console.readline, which we again convert into int. So this is inside this line we accept the value from user and convert it to integer and store inside this array index. First time array index will be 0, means at the 0th index first value will be stored, then at 1 index second value will be stored, then at 2 index third value will be stored. In this way n values stored inside this array. Now by using for each we can print those all elements which are stored inside this array. For that I am using here for each. You can use regular for loop as well. Now what is the syntax for each loop? For each, then circular bracket, then the element type of array. Here my elements are integer, so I am using here int data type, then any variable name like m, and then keyword in, and then array name. Here array name is array. Now we can print all the values of array by using only single statement, which is console.write. Line by line we can print the values of array as m. here first element stored inside M at first iteration, then second element stored at M from this array, second element fetched and stored inside M and it will be printed. Then third element will be stored inside this M at the third iteration and it will be printed. In this way, for each loop goes from first element to last element, and all the elements we can print by using this for each. Now my program is over here and my final line is console.read key. So this is the program for dynamic memory allocation of an array. Now here, if we run this program, we will get the output as, see, our program is compiling and there are no any errors, so it may run. What is the output of this program? First, it gives me the message as how many elements you want to store inside array. If I enter 4, then 4 times enter array element message will come in front of me, and I am giving 4 different values as 12, 45, 67 and 90. And by using for each loop, same elements will be displayed here. Same elements are displayed here. This is the for each loop output. Now again, if I run the program, then it gives me the different output, because if I give the different values, then different values will be stored inside the array. If I give 8 elements, then behind this program, the array allocates memory for 8 elements now. In previous output, I am giving the number of elements as 4, so it will it has been allocated memory for 4 elements only. Now in this output, I am allocating memory for 8 elements. So this is the dynamic memory allocation. For every execution, there is a different memory allocation. And this is not a static memory allocation, this is dynamic memory allocation. I am giving this 8, 4, 5, which is number of elements value at the running our program. So this number goes to our memory allocation, means this number of elements, n number of elements, memory allocated for these number of elements. At this current execution, memory allocated for 8 elements, and I am giving those 8 elements one by one as 23, then 56, 78, 12, 33, 44, 55, 66. So these are the 8 elements, and these 8 elements will be has been stored inside this allocation, memory allocation, and same we printed here by using for each loop. So this is the dynamic memory allocation. If we